All right, here we go. Welcome back. We are episode 199. I never thought we'd get close to 200. But it only happens because of guests that we've had here on the past and today, and for you listening. So really appreciate you being here as we wrap up the month of March and get into the rest of the season here. We got outdoor season, indoor season just ended, and I'm sure this is going to come up today because it was pretty stinking amazing. It's unbelievable what coaches are doing. So thank you for being here on the Gill Connections podcast, where we uplift and honor coaches from around the country. And today, got a great one. I've known this guy for a long time. He has had a lot of success that we're going to get into and a little uniqueness to his career, which I'm super excited to bring to you. So help me welcome the head coach of New Mexico Junior College. That's right. We're going to New Mexico, the land of enchantment today. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Mr. Keith Blackwill. Keith, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Man, I am fantastic. We just got off of, when we're recording this, we just finished up NCAA weekend. So we had crews in Albuquerque, out in your neighborhood, Virginia Beach, where I was, and even down in my old home state of Alabama at the Crossplex. Week before, we got to catch up a little bit at Washburn. What an amazing facility there in Kansas for the junior college national meet as well.
Yeah, unbelievable. State-of-the-art facility, no doubt.
Yeah, they did a great job there. Absolutely. And I'm sure that facility, because of the junior college meet and other facilities, will come up. We'll talk here soon, but I want to hop right into it, man, to be real frank with you. Because I think what I know of your career is fairly unique. So I want to make sure we expound on it. And I got I got 100 questions for you, man. That's just the first 5 minutes to help people understand your role in your journey here. So let's kind of hop back in our Wayback Machine, if you will. Where does coaching begin for you? And what I mean by that is, at some point, assuming you were an athlete, coaching in your mind had to switch from like, oh, it's just something that's done to me. Coach barks orders at me, tells me to go do X, Y, and Z. And somewhere had to flip and be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I could actually be this. Like, I could be a coach. That could be a career. Where does it go for you? Start for you.
For me, I was a mediocre athlete. I pole vaulted at Cloud County for Harry Kitchener back in the 80s. It was a good experience. I took a few years off because of academic issues. Went in the military, and then I ended up coming back and competing for Harry again, and this time focused a little more on academics than I did on the first time. But from there I went to Fort Hays State. I jumped for them. When I decided that I was going to get into coaching, the funny part of it was I was kind of a walk-on. I was a walk-on guy as an athlete. They actually gave me money to coach more than I did ever as an athlete. So it kind of let me know where my role was at there. Right. But they put me on as a student assistant coach at Fort Hays State, and I was coaching the vaulters at that time. Second year, I progressed into long triple jump also. So that's kind of where I decided, hey, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do.
So are you, assuming you just mentioned a lot of great Kansas schools there, are you a Kansas kid? Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, I'm actually from Western Kansas, small town out in Western Kansas called Quinter. Our claim to fame is Scotty Huffman was from there.
Oh, yeah. Is that right?
Yep. We used to pull off the highway. You pull off highway, it says boyhood home of Scotty Huffman, American record holder, 96.
Was that you mentioned you were a pole vaulter. Was that any fuel, like motivation to become a pole vaulter?
Well, funny thing is Scotty was 2 years younger than I was. So we jumped together in high school.
Oh, wow.
When I was in 8th, 9th grade, Scotty's dad used to coach me. He taught me how to vault. He taught me, a lot of good things there. And he was a state champion in Missouri pole vault. He was, on the old Swiss steel poles. So yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was, we'd back in those days, we'd have a mattress out in the backyard and be running down on dirt. It was just crazy fun. I mean, we started at a young age and just kept going.
And somehow still survived.
Still going, yeah. Now, I can tell you this: there are days I get up in the morning where my body says, "You're paying for that now, buddy."
They're like, remember that mattress?
Yeah,
Because
no
I
doubt.
do too. Well, so when you vaulted through high school, I had a cool background there with Scotty Huffman and his dad. That's awesome. As you went to Cloud County, and by the way, shout out to Harry Kitchener and the whole Cloud County crew. They were past guests here on the podcast too. So love them to death, Ted and the whole Drew and everybody there. They do an amazing job for a long time. Love those
Yeah.
guys. What was and maybe there wasn't, because you mentioned, I appreciate your humbleness here of like, hey, I didn't do too so well grade wise, but what was the plan as you went into college for a career where you think, it doesn't sound like you went in going, yep, I'm going to be an education major because I'm going to be a coach. What were you thinking as far as a career?
I really didn't know. It was kind of like, 80% of every kid that comes out of high school. I had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew that I was a good athlete, at the high school level, and I just wanted to see where it would progress from there. So I took a scholarship to Cloud, in those days back in the 80s, everybody said, well, you don't have to really go to class in college. You can kind of pick and choose. And I kind of lived by that a little bit and paid for that. So, but, as I got into it more, just the relationships, the everything that track and field and athletics has to offer just helped me to get through college. Without athletics, I wouldn't have made it through college. I was, just staying eligible, to be able to compete. So.
And you said you joined the military. What branch?
I was in the Army.
Yeah, is that right? Now, now the Army, tough SOBs there. Was there any track and field? Because I mean, I know they do PT and stuff, but I didn't know if there was any like field days or anything like that. Was track existent at all during this time?
Not really. Not for me. No, when I was over in Germany, they had a little local meet and they were letting everybody in. I showed up there and, picked up a pole that was laying there on the ground or beside the track and tried to jump, a little bit. And so that fire was still there a little bit, still wanted to do it, just not an opportunity. And then after I got out, I did 7 years there. And after I got out, I was wanting to get back into pole vaulting, wanting to get back into track and field. Tom Hayes, who's actually, at associate head coach at Kansas, was at Wichita State then. When I was my first year at Cloud County, Tom and I used to jump together. Harry would send us over to K-State, and we would jump with the K-State vaulters. Nowadays, I think that's illegal, but in those days, nobody worried about stuff like that. So we were good friends, and he was down at Wichita State. And I was thinking I wanted to go down there and try to walk on. And then I had to stop into Cloud and pick up my transcripts and get them sent over. Harry said, "Hey, you look all right. You want to try to jump again?" I said, "I don't know, Harry." And he goes, I'll give you a scholarship. So I said, "All right, I'm in here."
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Back in.
Yeah. So you were going to go to Wichita. That was kind of the plan at that time. You did 7 years. Now I am curious a little bit before we keep moving on here. In those 7 years in the Army, so not a lot of opportunity to do track and field. You mentioned that meet in Germany. I knew there were things like that. That's why I'd asked that question. But any coaching, and what I mean this is not obviously coaching track and field, because obviously there weren't necessarily opportunities, but leadership. What kind of leadership things were you doing that begets coaching here for you?
I mean, I was able to progress through the ranks a little bit, and eventually get a smaller, leadership role of a squad, things like that. As you get more rank, you get more responsibility. But I was still a younger guy, a little more immature probably, and as you get older, of course, you mature a little bit and start to see things a little bit differently. The military was good for me in the fact that it did help me to mature and have a little more direction in what I wanted to do. So.
You said as we grow, we mature. As we grow up in age, we grow. Not everybody, unfortunately. You've seen enough of those guys and gals that don't quite catch up maturity wise, even though we get older. So, okay, so you come back You did some time in Germany. That's awesome. Great experiences there. You think you're going to go walk on down at Wichita with the great Tom Hayes? That would have been amazing also, by the way.
Absolutely.
But Harry's got a way with words, and he was like, hey, wait a minute. You still you look like you can jump. And Harry believes he can coach anybody to do anything. So he was like, why don't you come down here and keep jumping? How'd that second round go for you? And what was the difference for you grade wise here, as far as your intentionality?
Well, I mean, I was never even in high school, I wasn't the straight A guy. I was always the guy that was getting the C's and a couple of D's in there. And, Harry, he gave me a little bit of direction. He gave me an idea of a sense of, hey, you can do this, and that's more so what helped me. I just, I think that had Harry not have kind of taken me under his wing a little bit there and, helped me out in the fact that, there, and then granted, there was times that it wasn't always a pat on the back, it would more be kind of a chewing out and, hey, you got to get this right. Athletically, coming back after that much of a layoff was, it was hard. We'd go through a tough workout on Monday or whatever, and I'd have trouble coming back on Tuesday because the recovery was just, tough for an older guy. I was 27, 28 years old at that time.
Right.
So, and granted, that's not old in regular world, but in track and field world, it is,
Yeah, that's interesting. I never, we think about dealing with 19, 20, 21-year-olds and like, oh, well, here's a 27-year-old. That is a whole different ball game. Yeah. So especially not only just any kind of regular track and field, which is tough as it is, but when we're talking about pole vaulting, especially, I could see that being even harder.
It takes its toll, no doubt. And I by that time, I had already had 3 knee surgeries. I had a ACL injury in high school playing basketball. Then the next year later, I tore up the other knee playing football. And then I guess 2 at that time. And then later on at Fort Hays, I came down in the box and again, tore cartilage and had to have surgery then. So,
dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and every day those hurt me now. So,
yeah.
Because back in those days, it wasn't as good as it is now. You had an ACL injury, you were basically done.
Right.
When I had that first one, they said, oh, you're done. Athletics is over. And I said, I don't think so. So,
you do the surgery, I'll do the competing. We'll be fine.
Yeah. And then the next year when I messed up the second one, they said same thing. We told you last year you were done. And I said, well, we'll see where this one goes. But they didn't tell me that again. They didn't say, hey, you can't do this anymore. They just kind of said, we would advise you not to do this.
It's like, all right, stubborn boy, here's what we got. Do what you want. But
pretty hard headed, no doubt.
Yeah. No, that I do know of you, Keith. That tracks there. So you end up going to Fort Hays State. As you go to Fort Hays State, any inkling of coaching at that point still at this point? I know this is where it starts to begin, but was it like, what did you declare as like your major when you first went in there?
When I went to Fort Hays, first I wanted to be a business major. Then I realized, well, I'm not maybe that smart. So, let's rethink that. But the more that I was around Jim Crubb, who was the head coach at Fort Hays at that time, the more I thought, hey, this guy makes a difference. He does a lot of good things. He helps kids out, and he gave me a lot of direction. And I would credit Jim for kind of, helping me to find my direction, because still at that point, I wasn't sure what it was. But, the more time I spent at Hays and got into it, that's where it went to.
What was it, as you think about the interactions that not only you had with Jim, but that you observed him having with other athletes on the team? You mentioned, that was you hear that story a lot of like, oh, like he made an impact, and like, therefore I would it inspired me to want to make an impact. What were some of the interactions or mannerisms that caught your eye that was like, man, that's powerful. I want to be that.
Well, Jim, Coach Crubb has a way with people. Jeff Becker, my assistant coach, he ran for 4 days also. And before every meet, before every meet, Coach Grubb went to every athlete before they're getting ready to compete. And he would talk to them. He would make them feel, hey, whatever you do here is fine. I want you to compete well, but hey, you're always going to be all right. And just how personable he was and everything he did to help his athletes, it just amazed me.
Sounds like he cared about the person over the event, but then obviously coached the event as well, but really cared about the person.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Great role model, great coach, very religious guy. But at the same time, I mean, if I needed chewed out, he was good about that too.
Knew when to apply the pressure and when not to.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And so it sounds like he gave you your first shot at as well, becoming a student assistant coach.
Yep. Yeah. When I finished with my eligibility, I knew I wanted to get into coaching. I knew that was my major now. And, Coach Grubb came to me and he goes, "Hey, I'll give you $500 to be our vault coach." And I thought, wow, $500.
They didn't give you $500 to vault. They gave you $500 to be the vault coach.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm making more to be coach than I am to be an athlete. I thought, well, it kind of tells you where I was at anyway. But, vaulters, no matter what, they're always that guy that's standing there beside the runway while the other guy is going. And they're going to help each other out. They're just that type of group, And I think that's how that kind of progressed into being able to coach.
Yeah. So I'm always interested because, being an athlete is different than being a coach, and not every good or any athlete in general becomes a good coach, and vice versa. Just because you were a great athlete doesn't make you necessarily you're going to be a good coach. And plenty of great coaches out there were no athletes at all in their events.
Yep.
So I'm curious, how did you handle that transition? So one day you're vaulting, you're concerned about, well, how do I get better at being a vaulter? And then the next day, oh, well, now I work with these kids to help them become better vaulters. How did that, mentally, how did you kind of tackle that transition?
It was easy for me. I didn't have a problem with it. Moving from running down the runway and standing beside the runway was not a problem. I enjoyed it. It was, I still got to be a part of track and field. I still got to go to track meets. I still get to do something that everybody, wants to do, that everybody loves to do. I mean, Joe Weiss, when I worked for Joe at Dodge City Community College, Joe would, he'd ask me, he'd say, "So are you going to be in this for a long time?" I said, "Joe, this is not a job for me. I don't want it to be a job. This is what I do. This is who I am." And even at that point, I knew that eventually, I was going to be that old guy that everybody said, "Man, I wish he'd retire."
We're getting there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Every day we get closer and closer. So how did you work on that part of your craft then? So like, again, when you're the athlete, you work on that craft by showing up, doing the running workouts, the lifting workouts, the vaulting workouts. Now you're a coach. What things did you do at this point, at least, to become a coach, to become a better coach, how to communicate with the athletes, how to learn technique, etc.?
I think that, I was pretty fortunate. I mean, as an athlete at Fort Hays, Matt Bouchard was the pole vault coach there. Matt's now the AD at Cloud County Community College. But Matt was a graduate assistant there. He was a 17-foot vaulter for Tom at Wichita State. And, I learned a lot from Matt, but also, Tom was still a great friend. We were still close. If I had any issues or anything I had questions about, I would call Tom and I'd say, "Hey, what do you think of this? What's going on here?" We'd go to meets and we'd sit and talk for a while, and he'd say, "Well, this looks good," or "We do this, we do that," and always try to try different things to see what works, because not everything works the same for every kid. Especially vaulters, because you never know what's inside that head. There's always something different going on there. So, there's different ways to reach each individual. And, it was more of a trial and error for some of the kids, or, this worked for another program. But vault coaches are always good about wanting to talk with each other
Mhm.
and figure out how things go, how to make it better.
Do you think you brought up a good point there about and you're using vaulters as your example here, but we could certainly be talking about hurdlers, shot putters, sprinters, et cetera, high jumpers, that, there's kind of this ideal model, and we don't talk necessarily X's and O's here, Keith. So stay with me as I fumble through this question here a little bit, but we have this ideal model of what the perfect pole vaulter looks like. But as you know, no one hits that. Like everybody has a little different, whether it's the takeoff or the run, what they're doing on top, et cetera. And you said a good point there about, everybody does it a little differently. So you as the coach have to model that, have to teach that a little bit differently, whether it's, helping improve their positives and diminishing their negatives, those kind of things. How do you think you learn that? Is that a coaching education thing? As you go to level 1s, level 2s, talking to other coaches, that's part of coaching education as you read books, watch videos, or is it more of a trial and error thing? As you get these different kids and athletes that do things differently, you have to kind of mess them up sometimes, but also find the right, the right cue, the right technique, et cetera. How do you think that's best learned for you?
I mean, I think it was more just a trial and error. I mean, when I first really transitioned from being a pole vault coach to coaching the other events and, eventually moving into the sprints, you look at a model of who's running well and everything, you think, man, I got to do it just like that. I have got to, if our kids are going to run fast, we're going to do this exactly the way it's done there. And then eventually you figure out, hey, this doesn't always work that way. Maybe our kids are not that type of athlete that can pick things up as quick. Maybe they need more work at basics, sprint mechanics, things like that. So, I mean, I think it's more of a trial and error, hey, this didn't work for this kid, but it did work for this kid, that type of thing. So.
Does that also kind of, and this is getting eerily close to X's and O's, so stay with me, listener. I know, first of all, I'm the worst. You would never want me to talk X's and O's anymore. It's been too long since I've coached. But does what you just described there, does that beget the importance of the basics? So if you have 100 vaulters and they all do things differently, their vaults are all different. They don't do radically differently, but they're different. But they all have certain things that they have to do and do correctly, whether it's acceleration on the runway, their optimal velocity in the middle of it, their takeoff high hands. I'd never coach vault, so Keith, don't laugh at me when I say the wrong things here, but there are certain basics of each event. So does that really, what you're saying there is that, if everybody's a little different, there's trial and error. Does that really mean that, well, you better have the basics down, because then the little differences are on top of that? But if they don't have the basics, well, it don't matter what they do uniquely.
Right. I think if the basics are not there, that's when you run into the issues that small problems become big problems at the end. So I think you've got to have the basics, the sprint mechanics, everything, strength, endurance, everything done there before you can go into the really the heavy technique issues. Because, I had when I was in Hayes, I had a vaulter. He was always under, and he was real towy with his running style and always reaching the board because of that. And we would go back to simple drills, simple sprint technique, and it was difficult to change that for him because he had been taught wrong from the beginning. Eventually, what I ended up doing was just saying, hey, this is the best that we're going to be able to get. So he was on a 15-foot pole, taking off a foot under, sometimes foot and a half. And I just thought, what if we moved you onto a 16-foot pole? What happens? Because in those days, there was no 15.7s. You couldn't go to the 15.3, the 15.7. It was a 14, 15, 16-foot pole. So we bumped him up to the 16. Sure enough, his step came out a foot. He was just a foot under again, and we started jumping on the 16s. He jumped. I think he jumped 15.7, 16.1, somewhere in there by the time it was done. So, it doesn't sound like a a great jump. But at that time, when you're coming from being a 13.6 vaulter coming in and jumping over 16 feet, it's a big deal. And I was happy for the kid, you know.
That's a great example of the creativity of coaching. It's like, man, we keep going under. We've done this, we've done that. You know what? Why don't we try this? Why don't we move to 16 and just see what happens? I'm sure if it would have been bad right off the drop, you'd be like, okay, well, that didn't work. So let's go back to the 15 to figure out how to get this step out. But I think that's a great example of the creativity of coaching there. I live on social media, and, this topic of basics of coaching, it's not sexy, right? I mean, we want to talk about the little nth degree of every event, and we kind of miss the whole, what is it, you miss the forest for the trees or something like that, where it's like, we're so worried about where the hand placement is over the hurdle, but we forget about, well, you got to be a good accelerator first, and you got to be good at maximum velocity, and you got to be strong. Oh, and you got to be flexible. These real basic things, but those aren't sexy. Talking about the hand placements or hip height and of these things, it seems a lot sexier. And it's like, man, if you would just go back and do the basics and get really, really good at them, get your athletes like superbly at them, you will be a much better overall team. You'll have much more improvement as the natural God-given skill and talent comes out. You'll have much more studs that way if you would just get the basics, not just down, but like
right.
Perfect. Yeah, that's interesting. So how long at Fort Hays? Making $500, by the way. Let's not forget that. And this wasn't the 30s. Let's not forget that. This is still $500 ain't much. How long and where'd you go next?
I was a student assistant for a year, and then I did get my bachelor's. So, I decided, well, we're going to go ahead and move on to graduate school. I got into graduate school there, got the graduate scholarship.
At Fort Hays?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Was a graduate assistant. I was actually there for a year and a half as a graduate assistant. And then at that time, I just thought, man, I am ready to get out of school. So, I was one semester away from getting my master's, but I said, heck with this. I need to get into, something that's going to pay a little bit. So the funny part of that is, Dennis Weber was the assistant at that time, and he goes, "Hey, I can get you a job over here at Coffeyville Community College." He goes, "They'll pay you $400 a month to live in their dorms." Yeah. And I was not making any money, just a scholarship. I thought, well, that's pretty good.
Keith, I was going to tell you, like, bravo, what a great story of a kid who goes to school, doesn't do well, drops out, goes to the military, comes back, earns his bachelor, and then earns his master's degree. Like, that's amazing. And then you tell me one semester to go, you're like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm going to Coffeyville.
Yeah, Coffeyville. That was an experience over there, living in the dorms, doing the monitor thing there.
Yeah, quite often, if you don't know much about the junior college system, this is quite often. As I was the head coach in Yosho, same thing. Our assistant coach was in the dorms. You're a dorm monitor, making a few hundred. I think I don't know. I don't think we paid $1,000. That seems like way too much. I want to say it was like $500-$600. Yeah. So how was that experience? So you go, you're still in junior college as far as you went Fort Hays, and now you're back to junior college, I should say. So the system, if you will, the kids and the type of program, et cetera. How'd that go?
Well, I mean, I was pretty fortunate. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was just coaching. In the evening, sitting at a little table there, monitoring people coming in and out, telling people turn the music down, that type of thing. And it was a good experience. I got to be able to start recruiting. I got to be able to get a feel of what it was like to be an actual full-time coach. I was only there for one semester. Dodge City Community College, Joe Weiss was the head coach over there. Joe's no assistant, and he was doing a great job. I mean, he was doing really well. And Tom Hayes calls me and goes, "Hey, Joe Weiss has got a job over here." He goes, "Yeah, what do you think of that?" I said, "Well, I'd love to have that job because it actually paid." I think I started out at $22,000 a year over there. And man, I'll tell you, coming from $400 a month to $22,000.
Oh, you're loaded.
I thought I was living high on the hog.
And you didn't have to do the dorm, right?
No, no
Yeah.
dorms,
Oh yeah.
no teaching. It was just a
Oh yeah.
straight coaching job. And I was fortunate, and that was really my first interview, and it was horrible. I mean, I was nervous, and the only Joe will tell you to this day, the only reason he hired me was because Tom Hayes recommended
Thanks,
me.
Tom.
I was like, thanks, Tom. And I said, uh, if Tom hadn't have gave me that recommendation, and Tom hadn't had that kind of pull with Joe, I don't know where I would have gone from there. I'd probably still be at Coffeyville working in the dorms.
And what about that is, we have plenty of listeners, coaches and athletes that listen that are either going to have their first interview or have had it and it went bad as well. When you say it was just a bad interview, and now you look back because you've had a few interviews since then that you've obviously done better at.
Yeah.
What was it? Were you just not prepared? Were you just nervous, not confident enough in yourself? What made it such a bad interview?
I was, I'd only been coaching, I'd never really got a paid job. I had a scholarship, $500 to coach at Hayes. I was making the $400 at Coffeyville, but realistically, Coffeyville at that point, just like Neosho, I mean, they're going to hire whoever they can because those jobs, only a few people are going to try to get in there, especially in those days. I mean, it was a rough road, so I didn't have that experience of actually being personable and putting myself out there. I just wasn't there yet, and I got nervous, and I just stuttered a lot, and it was just one of those things. It was a horrible interview, but you know what? Thank goodness for Joe, because if he hadn't taken a shot, and said, I think you can get it done, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Well, let's bring some value. Let's stay on this topic for one more second here. As someone maybe who's getting ready to do their first interview, and they hear this and they're like, oh man, maybe that might be me. What would you recommend for someone going? You've hired people now, so you've had plenty of people that have come in and interviewed with you and other athletic directors with you. What would you recommend? Someone who's coming up to their first interview here in the next, I mean, gosh, the semester's over here soon. There's a lot of kids out there, coaches that'll be doing other first interviews. What would you recommend for preparation from your side of it? That's someone who's interviewed a lot of people.
I mean, I think for track and field interviews, the best thing is to be personable. I like when we do our interviews for our assistant coaches, somebody that can be personable and has done their research. Know what's going on at where you're trying to go. I mean, we did an interview with an individual one time here, and the guy asked me, he said, "Do you have a track?" We had just got done hosting the outdoor national meet. So if you're asking that type of question, well, you haven't done your research. You don't know what we have here, and I don't understand how, if you apply for a job, you wouldn't know that, do your research, know history of the school, be personable, and try to relax, even though it's difficult. It's tough to relax on a first interview because you think, man, I got to have this. If I don't have this job, I'm in trouble. Just relax, be personal.
Yeah, I would echo that as someone, we're interviewing through positions right now here at Gill. And I those two things would be the kind of the truths that I would say as well. I'll expound just a little bit on the relaxed part. I want people to be who they are, their authentic self, whether that is if they're someone who typically is short to answer, maybe a little abrasive. We all have different personalities. I want you to be that in the interview, no matter what, whether it's here at Gill, New Mexico Junior College, everywhere, because that might be the culture for you. That might be they want someone who's like that. You'll fit in with the other staff and things like that. And if you try to go in and be everybody wants me to be the happy-go-lucky guy, so I'll be that. In reality, I'm not that person. Well, if you get hired as that person, well, your true self is going to show up at some point, whether it's a weekend, a semester in, 2 semesters in, it's going to show up. And you weren't the right person culturally for that job. And you don't know what type of personality they're looking for. So you be yourself. And if you don't get the job because of your personality, Good, perfect, because that wasn't the right place for you anyway. You would have been miserable. They would have been miserable. It all would have ended bad. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. Being personal, be yourself. If you are whoever you are, be that person in the interview, and that'll be better for you in the long run. And two, the research part. Like I couldn't imagine a coach coming to you and saying, "Hey, do you have an outdoor track?" And you're like, "Wait a minute, we just hosted nationals." If you're not willing to do the research for this is a pretty important thing. It's a job. If you're not willing to do the research for this job interview, well, that makes me think you're not going to do research when you're recruiting. Would I ever have you set up hotels for us? Gosh, you're not going to do the research there. Like I start to have a little bit of mistrust there on that.
Yeah.
So I agree with that 100%. When someone comes in here and you ain't got to know the whole history, like when you talked about the history of school, like, no, like maybe, yeah, I've seen you've won national titles, coach. That's amazing. I'd love to help you win more, those kind of things.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
to know nothing, did not even know the basics of like, you have a track. That seems like a red flag.
Yep. And to me, that just says, okay, you applied because you thought nobody else might apply, so, yeah, it you got to understand what you're doing and do your homework a little bit. No doubt. No doubt.
I agree. Well, that's good. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that your bad first interview, see, it had fruit. It helped people right here. People are listening and they're like, okay, good. I'm not going to have as bad a first interview as Keith did. The real moral of the story, boys and girls, is have someone like Tom Hayes recommend you. That's always helpful.
Yes. And they always told me it's not what you know that gets you your job, it's who you know.
Yeah. And what keeps you in the job, though.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about what you knew. At this point, are you still only a vault coach, or have you started expanding out to some other events?
Oh, well, Joe hired me as the sprints, hurdles, throws, jumps.
What did Joe do? Good Lord.
Joe coached all the distance. Joe came down last week or 2 weeks ago. We were at uh, Washburn, and Joe came down on Friday and hung out with us for a little bit. And Joe was telling my assistants about my first 2 weeks there, and this is January. I was at Coffeyville for the first semester, went in there in January. Joe said he had never had an assistant coach before, and he was just happy to not do much, at that time. He was throwing stuff on my desk. Hey, you need to do this. Hey, get these hotel rooms. Hey, make sure these, and finally I said, whoa, Joe, I'm a little overloaded here, buddy. He goes, that's all you had to say.
Oh, interesting.
He started pulling stuff back off my desk, but after a while you kind of find your medium. You kind of find, hey, this is my niche. I'll do this. This is your niche. This is what you do, and that's how the relationship between the assistant and the head coach kind of gets to grow and gets better. And that's where we were at. I finally found my spot, and Joe got his spot. But Joe's dad is Dick Weiss, who the legendary coach from Oklahoma State. And Dick was always calling Joe every day, giving us advice. You got to do this. You got to do that. Joe, make sure this happens. And it was a lot of fun. It was an experience.
What did you think before we jump into the how you started learning to coach all those other events? Talk to me about that side. You talked about Joe would give you the hotels to get the maybe uniforms, things like that. No one, we've done nearly 200 interviews on this podcast. No one yet has ever said, I got into coaching so that I could do paperwork, operations, uniform ordering. No one has ever said that yet. So I'm going to assume, Keith, these were kind of new. Like, this is not why you got into coaching. So some of this was a little bit new to you. What did you think about that side of
I hated it.
coaching?
I hated the paperwork. Hated having to do all that. Hated being in the office. It was just, something you had to do. Mm-hmm. As soon as I could get out of the office and be on the track, I was, that was great for me. I mean, I didn't like the paperwork. I didn't, I did learn it, but you have to do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. Otherwise your AD is going to get rid of you, especially when you're not turning in receipts. It was an experience. There was no doubt. I learned a lot. I was at Dodge for a year and a half, and I learned a lot at that time. So
What was the hardest thing for you to learn? Meaning, it's different booking hotels versus, back then what we used to do with receipts, taping them and all that stuff. It's all digital now, thank goodness. But what was like the hardest? Like, man, why really we have to do this as track coaches? What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing was, I guess we didn't have teach, so we could focus a little more. But for me, the worst of it was receipts. I mean, everywhere you go, we'd have to pay with a credit card. You couldn't take the cash, couldn't give meal money. And if I missed a receipt, it was always just a pain. And I hate it. I still hate it today, but fact is it's gotten a little bit simpler with the automation, electronics and stuff. But back in those days, I mean, it was just like recruiting. I mean, there was no computers. There was, you were at the O show. You had to go to actual meets and watch kids run. You had to, travel all the time just to do recruiting. Nowadays, you got Instagram, you got Twitter, you got all this. In those days, if you're going to recruit, you better get to the meet, talk to kids, talk to coaches.
Right.
If you got to travel, we'd go from Dodge City to Missouri. If we got to travel 16 hours to recruit, you got to do it.
Yep. What did you think about that aspect? You brought up recruiting, something that I thoroughly enjoyed, but maybe
you were killing us. You were killing us at the O show. Osho County wasn't even on the map, and then all of a sudden here they come. They're like what, second or third at the region first year.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, certainly enjoyed that aspect. Didn't necessarily enjoy the 8 hours to watch a track meet and then 8 hours back because you couldn't afford a hotel room. I remember those days.
That's a rough road.
And I remember the first day I got in at Neosho, we had 3 kids returning. This was the end of May. And end of May, like everybody knows where they're going. And we got 3 kids returning. And I was like, I feel like I'll have a better shot at Kansas kids versus anybody else to start out with. So I called remember the Clell Wade, the big gray book that had every high school. I called up every school in Kansas, like who's left, who has a heartbeat, because I got nobody to start with.
And you would do the little printouts and send out letters to every high school, remember?
Yes, yeah. Do they still do those questionnaires and stuff? Is that still a thing, or is it all online?
I mean, online.
Yeah.
Online.
Yeah.
We have our questionnaire up online. Kids can fill that out and submit.
Yeah.
So we don't have to print out 1,000.
Yeah.
Hey, you look good. Hey, your school's doing well. And wait for those questionnaires to get back.
So what did you think about, you said you started recruiting at Coffeyville, and then now you're at Dodge City. So now you really are recruiting. How did you like that aspect of, talking to 17, 18-year-old kids? I don't want to say it's different. It may not be different for you at this point, for sure, because all you really know is junior college, but junior college is different than a 4-year institution.
Absolutely.
The recruiting's different, et cetera. How did you like, as you started learning how and what and when and where to recruit? How did you like that aspect? Not everybody likes it.
I enjoyed the recruiting. I mean, to me, it was always fun. I would stay in the office at Dodge City till 11 o'clock because you recruit different time zones at different times. So I'd be making calls, doing everything that we needed to do there until 11, and then go home, get a few hours sleep, come back, have practice at 7 a.m. Because when you coach all those different event areas, right, that's a rough road. But the recruiting was always a great time, because Joe and I, we would travel, we would go to, wherever we needed to go, Kansas State meet, Missouri State meet, whatever it was. And it was always a good bonding moment. But, we didn't have a big recruiting budget, so that was always driving. Most of the time taking our own personal vehicles, so it was an experience.
Tell me more about the experience of recruiting as now inside of Kansas. There's a strong culture of junior colleges because there's 1,000 of us there in Kansas. So a lot of kids grow up at least knowing what a junior college is, or at least know the aspect, like, oh, I've heard the names of these junior colleges, because again, there's just so many of them. But when you would call a kid in Florida or New York, or well, even if you called California, even though they have a strong community college system there too, they didn't know Dodge City. In fact, they probably thought you were calling from some Western movie or something. How was that aspect of like, oh, okay, here's who we are, what we offer, why I'm even calling you specifically?
It was, I mean, it was difficult, no doubt. Out of state recruiting was more of who you knew. I mean, if you knew the coach down there, you were a lot better off. But recruiting, we stayed out of California. We didn't recruit California. Couldn't get those kids.
Yeah.
I mean, the community college system there, if they go there, they're basically going for free. I think they only paid at that time. They only paid for dorms if they stayed on campus, which most of them didn't have dorms. They were staying at home.
Right.
So I mean, we didn't recruit California. We stayed in Missouri a lot. Missouri a lot. We would go over. Vince Bingham was at Lindenwood. I was real close with Vince, and if there was someone coming out that Joe and I usually got pretty good shot at those kids, because Vince would call and say, hey, you need to recruit this kid or that kid. Vince did a lot for us. And that relationship started with Joe, because Dick Weiss was good friends with Vince also. So Dick would always call and say, hey, there's a kid here, there's a kid there. So, you get a number and we call, and it's just basically, there was no internet, so they couldn't look things up. You had to say, here's what we do, here's what it is, and then eventually, if we needed to, we'd go down and do the in-home visit, sit down and talk to the mom, the parents. But you take your brochure and everything you could take. You got a suitcase full of paperwork to show.
What was your thought process towards four-year college coaches at this point?
You mean as far as
leveraging for recruiting, not having your kids recruited? We'll get there to that point, but leveraging them, whether it's they know of a kid that they like, but grades or whatever. Right. What was
and that was huge too. There was a lot of referrals from Division I schools that say, hey, you guys are doing a good job over here. We've got this kid that's not going to make the grades. What do you have? Can you help them out? Can you bring them in? So there was a lot of that for sure. And things were different in those days also, in the fact that if a kid was referred by a Division I school, I mean, we made sure nobody talked to that kid until that school said, hey, we're not interested anymore. There was no coming in there and just recruiting whoever you wanted.
Does you mentioned that, and the term, I think it probably started with basketballs and football as it relates to junior college in four-year schools, the bounce back. So a kid maybe goes to a four-year, maybe pulls a Keith Blackwill, doesn't do well their first year, so they need to go to junior college. But it's like, hey, we're doing that because we want them to come back, to bounce back. That's where that term comes from, right? I'm gonna throw them to you, Keith, but they need to bounce back my way, not my competitor's way. You mentioned back then there was a lot of, and I remember this 100%. There was a lot of I don't necessarily want to say your word is your bond of like, hey, if you send your kid my way, I'll make sure they go back, because the kid still has to choose at the end of the day.
That's right.
Is that not go on as much today?
Everything has changed. Recruiting is night and day different from what it used to be. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I've got, young coaches, young assistant coaches that, man, they live on Twitter. And everything happens through Twitter. Everything happens through social media now. It's just a whole different ballgame where, we would have to have an actual personable relationship with every kid that we were recruiting, because, there was no getting on there and texting. There wasn't any of that. It was a whole different ballgame.
So is that, when a kid comes from a four-year school, is there less of a, hey, we're going to make sure you only go back to that school, or is it now back to like you're back to open if you so choose?
There's still a certain amount of that. Yes. I mean, I think you've got to be loyal to the people that are loyal to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we tend to want to help the people that help us more
Mm-hmm.
than I want to
Right.
help somebody that I've never talked to.
Sure.
If our kids are being recruited, and I don't know if this is right, I don't know if it's wrong, but the fact of it is, if our kids are being recruited by someone that I don't know, that hasn't done anything for us, or shown that they even help their junior college transfers out, I'm more apt to tell a kid, I would not recommend, this school, but I would recommend this,
Mm-hmm.
because if someone has shown that they take care of our kids, and they send us kids, or send us numbers, or try to help us, we're more apt to help them, of course, I
Yeah.
think.
I think they have a whole law called the law of reciprocation.
Yeah,
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 you're more apt to want to do something for someone who does something for you. Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
let's jump back on that track. You're in your year and a half there at Dodge City. You come from a pole vaulting background, but now you're coaching throwers and jumpers and sprinters and hurdlers. And Tom's a great resource for a lot of those events as well, but he's not the resource for everything. What are you
Yeah.
doing to learn this? How did you learn these things?
I was pretty fortunate. I got to know Brian Compton.
Hmm.
Compton was at Wichita State then, and Compton's a great vault coach now, but in those days he was a throws coach at
Right.
Wichita State. He he did a great job there. Tom coached vaulters, Compton coached throwers. So, I'd talk to Brian, get info from him, get input. Scotty Steffens, later on, he was also over there. But we just talk to people, research books. In those days, it was books. It wasn't looking it up and watching a video on YouTube.
Yeah,
It
no
wasn't
YouTube.
any of that. It was, hey, you got to read this book. You've got to, uh, there was just a lot of different resources, but you had to actually read it or look for it, in person. You go to the library, you'll say this, okay, but again, it's all hit and miss too. This worked,
Mhm.
this didn't work. We're getting rid of that. Um, you know, that type of situation.
Now your base of coaching is one of the more, they're all difficult in their own ways, but the pole vault is certainly a very challenging event to coach. So your base is coming from one of the more difficult, challenging events. As you start adding these other events, was there any that challenged you that you're like, man, if we could get another coach, I would offload this event group pretty fast? Was there any that really challenged you?
Yeah, there was. I mean, when you've got that much stuff, it's very difficult. Somebody always gets cut short. You
Mm,
can't. There's only so much time in a day, and the throws was always something where I thought, I wish I had a throws coach. I
mm,
wish I had someone that could spend more time with these kids, because the field events are always, to me, a little more technical.
mm.
So they need more time with that individual event coach. So I mean, I've always kind of felt bad for some of the throwers that we had at that time, because they just you know didn't get the individual instruction that they needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm always amazed at, and there seems to be less and less of these single sex programs, just women and women coaches and men with men's staff. But on those staffs, you'll have like a field events coach or a sprints, hurdles, jumps coach, and they're
Right.
doing the 100 up to the pole vault and combined events. And it's like, man, I know you have less numbers because you don't have both men and women, but still to be able to coach. I mean, think about how many, using that throws as an example, how many throws coaches, so air quotes here, they only have the throws and they coach from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. They have hammer throwers here and javelin throwers this time and shot putters, and because of class schedules, and that's just throwing. And there's plenty
Yeah.
of coaches that are doing throws plus jumps or vault or verticals, etc. Yeah, that's extremely tough. I wondered if there was an inflection point there of like, man, it was challenging already because I'm learning it and I just don't get to spend enough time with them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But at the junior college level, usually in those days you only had two coaches. That was
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had two, you were probably one of the better programs, because
Yeah.
some only had one.
Yeah, absolutely. So a year and a half at Dodge, what did we do next?
From there, I went over to Odessa College for 1 year. And it was an experience. I went over as the assistant coach. stayed for a year and a half, and then went over to Garden City, or
Mhm.
I'm sorry, 1 year at Odessa, and then over to Garden City Community College.
So Odessa is your first time, not counting 7 years in the Army, of course, but coaching wise and track wise, this is the first time you're out of the state of Kansas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're in Odessa, which is kind of like Kansas of Texas.
Yeah, you're right about that. It was
middle of nowhere.
yeah, just a little bit larger. That's all.
Yeah, right.
Because Dodge City, I think at that time, Dodge City was 25, 30,000, maybe a little bit better. But, Odessa went down to 100,000, had an airport right there.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those things where recruiting was a little bit easier with a larger community. I was able to expand into Texas a little more as far as recruiting also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was a good move.
And Odessa, being in Texas, seems like it has a couple of advantages over maybe most of the Kansas schools. One is you don't have 20 other junior colleges to recruit against, for one.
Right.
We did have several, or I shouldn't say several, we did have a few Texas junior colleges, but again, it's friggin' Texas, right?
Right.
And the other part is you're in friggin' Texas. So I love the state of Kansas. It's amazing the high school athletes that come out of there. Trust me. Go to the state meet at Kansas, packed. It's an amazing event there. But you're in friggin' Texas. There are lots of good athletes there, and they've heard of Odessa, even though you're on the west versus the 35 corridor, if you will. But it seems like there'd be a lot of advantages for recruiting, et cetera, there at Odessa.
No doubt. Now, in those days, Kansas JUCOs, the Region 6, I mean, they tied their own hands because scholarship-wise, you could only offer the books and tuition.
Mm-hmm.
Out of state, anything out of state, you had to pay for a scholarship through the Booster Club. Mm-hmm. So it had to be all fundraised and done through that. So once I moved down to Texas, we had the opportunity to offer a full ride scholarship, being in the Region 5.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that changes recruiting altogether. So where I'm primarily in Kansas, we try to recruit Kansas kids because we have 30 in-state books and tuition. Mm-hmm. So we need to fill those with Kansas kids, and we need to make sure that our scholarships are filled, because at that time in junior college, it was a numbers game. Remember when you were in Neosho County, they probably said, Mike, doggone it, we need to have at least 30 and 30 on both sides.
At least, yeah.
So here's 30 books and tuition, go do your thing.
Right.
So once you go down to Texas, it's a different situation. We've got the opportunity at the Region 5 JUCO level to offer a full scholarship. So it was a lot more, it changed recruiting quite a bit, because we were able to recruit a higher level athlete coming out of high school.
So at Odessa, was it more of what I'm going to call the traditional D1, D2 recruiting, meaning you had X amount of full scholarships and you could cut those at 50s or 20%, et cetera? Just you had a pool of your total. Is that what that was?
Yeah. Had a lump sum pool of money, and we split those out exactly, where we wanted to go. So we're able to treat it just basically like a Division I. Okay, I'm going to give you 30%, you get 20%, right, whatever that might be. So it was a whole different situation as far as scholarships.
And did you guys, because my year at Neosho Outdoors was at Odessa Outdoor Nationals, was that Odessa Community College's track, or was that a city track?
And that was 2002, right?
2001.
201. See, I left Odessa after that year, went to Garden City for a semester, went over to Allen for a semester, went back to Odessa as the head coach, and that's when I hosted that national meet.
Right.
That track was our track.
Okay.
Now, we used the track at Ratliff Stadium for the other events, which, football stadiums at high school level in Texas are phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, Friday Night Lights, everything they had going there. So we would do what we couldn't do at Ratliff down at the college. We did the javelin, we did the multis, we did the pole vault, so steeplechase. because Ratliff didn't have the steeplechase bit because it was a high school facility.
See, I didn't remember that. Partly because I didn't have any of those kids at the meet. We just did the hundreds and 400s and stuff like that. And I remembered everything in that stadium. And I just remember this is my memory, which, you know, memories are fallible. The stadium, it was a football stadium, which was awesome. That was fun. Out in and this is why I say Odessa in the middle of nowhere. Because if I remember right, you drove out to the stadium. There was nothing around the stadium. It was awesome. I remember under the lights. That's back when Lance had all those jumpers at Barton, and those guys were jumping 54, 53, 55. And it was under the
Walter
lights.
Davis.
Yeah.
Levan
Sands. Yeah. Remember those? It was just a really cool atmosphere under the lights. Kids jumping out of their wazoo. It was just a lot of it, and there was some pride, even though you were trying to beat those guys at the national meet. There was a lot of Kansas JUCO pride. The Jayhawk Conference pride is like, yep, if you're gonna win, you're gonna come through one of us. Right. At this point, it was Barton, but it's like you're gonna come through one of us to win this sucker. So yeah, it was a lot of pride, a lot of good memories there.
Yeah, in those days, Barton was unbeatable.
Yeah,
just unbeatable.
Yeah. When was Blinn folded? Because I've always heard the story of as good as Barton was, and they were winning nationals. Again, this is my memory, so you can fact check me, and I'm probably wrong. They were winning nationals by 100+ points, and they were just so dominant. But I always heard the story of Blinn, like if Blinn during its heyday would have crushed Barton during its heyday. That's how good Blinn was. But I don't remember when Blinn folded, when they dropped their program.
I mean, Blinn, what was 94, 95, somewhere in there.
Okay.
I can remember them being at indoor nationals at Kansas State back in 93. They had Henry Neal. I mean, they were just brutal. And that's why the junior college put that rule in that you can only put 3 kids in every event.
Because of Blinn.
Because Blinn had so many athletes, they could stack 6 in there and just I mean, they would score huge. I mean, they would have scored 300 points because they would come into nationals, and their goal, my understanding, was to score over 200 points and just walk away with things. You remember Ryan Barkdahl used to pole vault for Tom at Wichita State. Ryan came from Blinn. I was talking to Ryan about Blinn one day, and he was telling me, he said, it didn't matter how good you were, you got there an hour early so you could just get on the bus. They said, if you didn't get there early and couldn't get on the bus, you weren't going to the meet. Yeah, what a problem, right?
Yeah, what a problem. Yeah. I didn't realize. So if you're saying mid-90s, so the kind of the time frame you and I are talking about right now is 2000, 2001, 2002. That's not that long ago. I kind of had the idea like Blinn was like a 1980s thing and dropped it like at 1990s. That wasn't that long ago that it had dropped.
Right. And at that time, you were looking at San Jacinto.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there was probably 4 or 5,
Ranger,
maybe 6. Yeah, Ranger. Ranger. Remember Brian Fetzer used to be over at Ranger.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's probably the only reason I know Rangers, because of Fetzer.
You're right.
Was South Plains around back then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were there because James Morris was the head coach over there. And James, he won a ton of titles. Cross country, a few on the track. Odessa had James Seacrest. I mean, it was, they'd go head to head now. They were tough.
Yeah.
Pat Henry had just come from Hobbs High here in Hobbs, New Mexico.
Right.
He went Hobbs High to Blinn and was over there.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew he was at Blinn.
A lot of major coaches over there that, came through the junior college system.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, leave Odessa, go to Garden City Community College. Another great program, man. That's fantastic. You just had to get back to Kansas.
Yeah, I don't know why. Just one of those things, and Dave Self was the head coach over there.
That's right.
I mean, Dave could sell anything to anybody, I can tell you that. He sold me on coming to Garden City Community College. He said, hey, man, he said, hey, I'll drive down there and I'll move you up here.
I believe that.
Because junior college, don't pay for any kind of moving expenses, Dave grabbed the school van, the old 15-passenger, put a trailer on it. Come down and throw all my junk in there, and anything that didn't fit, we threw away.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I've been up there. I spent a semester with David Garden, and Terry Van Lanningham had just left Allen County to go over to Wichita State.
Right.
Terry called me and said, "Hey, your assistant over there, maybe it's time to be a head coach. Allen County's looking for a head coach because I'm going to Wichita State." I said, I went to Dave and I said, "Dave, what do you think?" And Dave, well, you know what Dave would say, "No,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
a bad
No.
idea." And I said, "Well, Dave, I think it's time to transition from being an assistant to being the guy that gets his butt chewed all the time." And Dave supported me really well on that. He understood. He didn't like me leaving after one semester, but he understood.
Mm-hmm. What, interesting, Keith, is people are listening now, they hear, a lot of, I was here for one semester, I was here for 1 year, I bounced here and there, and very similar to my coaching career as well. I was here for 1 year, then 2 years, and 10 years of coaching. I was at 5 different institutions. So this is not me casting judgments on you. I was the exact same way. But using my experience, I have to ask, what were you searching for? And what I mean by that is, there was no roots. Your roots are in the state for sure, but no roots, not Dodge City for 5 seasons, not Garden City for another 6. It was semester here, year here. What were you searching for?
I think, it's one of those things. What you're looking for, a good fit. You're looking, and at that point, I'm looking for consistency in the program. I wanted administration that would support us. I wanted, community to be able to be involved. I wanted a complete track program. And, maybe I didn't stay long enough at some places to be able to give that an opportunity. But at that time, my justification was, it was wherever I was at, I left better than when I got there.
Right.
Dodge City, the women's team at Dodge City before I got there was 27th in the nation the year before. My first year, we were 5th. So I mean, it was night and day different, and that success and everything that went on there, that helped me to move on and to move up a little bit. But you just don't know what you're looking for really until you find it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's a very heady question, as if like you're trying to find enlightenment or anything. But some of it certainly in this, not only in this age and stage of your career at that point, but also in the area as far as junior college. Some of it could be like, I was trying to make a living as well. I was like, if there was another dollar to be made here, I got to go there. And there's zero judgment in that, because we don't pay our track coaches enough in any level. So 100% get that. And again, at your age and stage, and you just hit it right there. It's like, well, actually, I don't know what I was searching for as well. I mean, I was a kid still at this point, even though you'd done 7 years in the military. That'll change you from kid to adult, but you're still searching. You don't know what you're looking for. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did becoming the head coach at Allen change you then? Because that's it 100%. Well, actually, this is my opinion. You tell me. I believe it's 100% different when you're the head coach versus an assistant coach, no matter what program and level you're at. How did that change you becoming the head coach?
Oh, it was night and day, because, it's kind of like Joe told me one time. Joe told me, you can screw up, but I'm the first one that gets called in the AD's office when you screw up, not you.
Yes.
And that was the thing. But I had no assistant coach over there.
Right.
It was just me. But I was responsible for everything. If it didn't get done, if I didn't do it, it wasn't going to get done. So, I mean, that changes everything dramatically. So, as an assistant coach, I was maybe not quite so organized, because I would say, okay, we can do it this way, we can do this. But being the head coach, now all of a sudden, I got to have some organization. I've got to write things down. I've got to have a list of things that I need to do every day. Because if I don't do that, then we don't get our travel for the next meet. The bus doesn't show up, or we don't have the vans, whatever it might be. So, I mean, it changed a lot. I mean, I was stressed out a lot more. There was no doubt.
Is that the number one skill set you think a new head coach needs to learn and learn fast is the organizational side of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, really as an assistant, you're turning in receipts, you're doing whatever you've got to do, but you're not in on all the day-to-day operations. The day-to-day operations, if you are not organized and forgetting something, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in your case there at Allen, because I truly believe in delegating, but you didn't have anybody to delegate. There wasn't an assistant coach like, okay, you can do scheduling or buses, etc. No, it all fell to you.
Yeah, and I was also director of the fitness center there, so I had to do all the classes. I had to set up times for baseball to come in and use the facility, times for us to use the facility, things like that. It was an experience, but you know what? Thank goodness it was Allen was smaller, so I was able to kind of figure things out as I went. And at that time, I was making $30,000 a year, man. I was in the money, right?
Especially in Allen. Yeah,
no doubt. But
how did you paint the picture here? You're the head coach of a program, so everything you can think of in a track and field program, budgeting, scheduling, travel, etc. You're the director of the fitness center area. So not only are you classes and scheduling those things and all the other teams that need to use that indoor facility, etc. But you're also coaching. You also remember the title is head coach. You are still a coach.
Yep.
How did you prioritize what events to recruit, what events to coach? Because again, no assistant coaches, so you can't say, well, distance coach, you can go take that and I'll take some of these. Did you try to do all the events or did you focus on a few? How did you do that?
I wanted a full team. I wanted, just like you at Neosho County.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to just go out there and do a little bit here and there. Mm-hmm. You want to win. If you didn't want to win, you wouldn't have got into this.
Right.
So you're going to try to recruit a full team. I mean, and that's what I did. I tried to do everything. At the end of that year, they gave me, I hired an assistant coach for the upcoming year. So we were going to have two of us, but I had a good situation there because out of state tuition went all the way down into Tulsa. So our in-state tuition, went all the way down into Tulsa. So those kids were still they were paying like $35 an hour for tuition, which is, really cheap. So, I was spending a lot of time down in Tulsa, McAllister, recruit kids down there. Mm-hmm. But when I wasn't, the other nice thing was the golf membership at Allen County at the golf club was $500 a year.
Oh yeah, is that right?
So I paid for $500 a year. I would work from 7 to 5. Then I'd go out and golf 9 holes, grab a couple of McDonald's cheeseburgers, and go back to the office and recruit till 11.
I was about to say, I know you don't go home after that, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was a single guy. My golf game was getting better, and I was always a terrible golfer, still a terrible golfer, but I was getting pretty good. But and the nice thing about it was, it was just so not very much stress. It was just go, go, go. When I went in there was 12 kids on a roster, men and women together. After that one semester there, when I left in May, I had 38 kids signed on.
Wow.
It was just recruit.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me a lot of Neosho because it was like, oh, what did you do that first year? Well, I coached a little bit, but trust me, I recruited all of them. That's all he could do.
Yeah, no doubt.
So where from Allen to
back to Odessa?
Back to Odessa, is that right?
First time I was at Odessa, I was the assistant coach. This time I'm going back as the head coach.
Okay, all right.
So we went in there, or I went in there, and it was an experience. They had told me that Odessa was getting ready to drop the program. I'd heard that rumor. When the AD called me, he said, no, I don't believe we're going to do that. Everything is good. I said, well, you guys are hosting the outdoor national meet. I really don't want to run that thing. And, he goes, well, we'll figure that out. We'll hopefully find somebody that'll cover that. And you know, that next year when I'm running the chalk stripes for the javelin, I thought, man, that didn't go very well for me then. But yeah, it was nice to go back down as the assistant, and I was there for 2 years, and then the president did end up dropping that program, which was a difficult road.
Yeah. What's that like? I mean, luckily only a few of us know this, have had this experience, but it has to be one of the worst experiences you can have as a coach. I mean, as coaches, we invest so much into our program, which means we invest so much into our athletes. And you know guys as well as I do, Keith, that have had kids pass away. I mean, that's hard. That might be the ultimate heartbreak for our coach. We've had kids get in trouble. We've had kids that are on the right path to do something to change generationally their family, and go off the deep end and do something bad. For your program to be cut, that's got to be a top 5 helplessness type of feeling.
I was angry.
Talk to us about this.
To me, I felt like our kids, a kid that I recruited in there and said, you will be here for 2 years. You will graduate. You will move on. You will do this. You will be able to do that. I felt like we undermined everything that we try to do for our kids. And the thing that bothered me the most was that those kids were not taken care of. They said, well, those kids that want to stay and get their associates here, we'll go ahead and give them a books and tuition scholarship for next year. And I thought, what the heck? This kid's on a full scholarship, and we're going to cut them down to books and tuition just to say, okay, you can come back and finish.
Even the kids that were full. Yep. Oh.
And I argued with them about that. I argued with them. It was a horrible, horrible thing. That I would never want to go through, or would never wish on someone again. I just, and you can't help but take something like that personal. It was just it just cuts you so deep, because you feel like, we had 30 girls on that team. It was only the women's program. I felt like every one of those kids was just getting the shaft there. I felt like they were getting screwed over, and there was nothing that I could do. I went and talked to the president, and all I did was, in those days I wasn't as maybe diplomatic as I am now, and all I did was make him more angry, and so the school had more animosity towards me, and I had animosity towards them. It was a horrible situation. I never would like to see a coach go through that, or to have to go through that again.
When I was at Ball State, I was on the women's side. So I left Neosho to go to Ball State. So I was right after that. And we had an AD who's now the AD of University of North Carolina, by the way, Bubba Cunningham, who I consider myself friends with him. But he decided to drop the men's program. And there's been other programs that have been dropped. And while I can understand their decision-making, doesn't mean I agree with it. And I told Bubba that. I was like, Bubba, this is not the right. Also knowing I don't know the whole thing that's going on. I get it, blah, blah, blah. Although I still can never see how dropping track and field is a positive for the university and the student athlete experience. But every school I've ever heard of dropping has said, okay, whatever scholarship you're on, if you'd like to stay here, we will keep you on until you graduate. And I think that's the right way to do it, because, we harp on these kids to choose a school that if the coach wasn't there or the program wasn't there, you would still go there. So I like that. Like, hey, if you're on 50%, 70, 80, 100,
yep,
you will still get your diploma from this university. I love that. So to hear that their solution to that was, we'll just drop everybody. Like, yeah, we'll keep you here if you want to earn your associates, but it's going to be books and fees, which that's not what we signed you on. Like, you came here under the promise of this amount, and now we're going to cut. That just, that hurts.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But, it was tough. But, our kids, we did our best, myself and my assistant, to try to get those kids somewhere else, to try to get them somewhere where they were going to be able to finish their degree, to finish out that sophomore year, and to be competitive, and go to 4 years.
Now, you'd been coaching for quite a while at this point. you're fully ingrained as a coach. There's no, typically I'll ask like after the first year or two, you still wanted to be a coach? Like, was there ever any inflection point of like, maybe I should go back to do this? But you at this point, you're fully ingrained. However, you just have this, not fairly, you have this traumatic experience of dropping a program. I don't want to say regrets, any thought, any even small little 1% worm in your brain of like, oh man, what am I doing? Why am I coaching this silly sport with these silly administrators? I could go be a car dealer, a teacher, whatever. Any thoughts at all creep in your mind as you're going through this with the dropping of the program?
Nope. I just started looking for other jobs. I applied. I did an interview at Neosho County.
I'm so sorry.
I did an interview at Cowley County. Mark Phillips and I were the only two they interviewed. Mark ended up getting that job. And then Lyles Lashley is over at Barton. Lyles, a good friend of mine. They had a position open. And then I also had applied at Corpus Christi, down at UT Corpus Christi. But fortunately, Lyles, he said, hey, come up here. We'll make you a housing director or assistant of housing. We got a little trailer house down below you can live in. You can be the jumps coach, and we'll just keep winning. I said, okay, that sounds good.
I could see Lyle saying that. We'll just keep winning.
Yeah.
You mentioned you interviewed at Corpus Christi. You've got a heck of a resume at this point of success and good coaches, or good athletes. You've got head coaching experience at this point. Was there ever a look at four-year schools, whether it's Wichita, Friends?
I think once you stay at junior college for so long, you're a junior college guy. And at that point, I knew I was a junior college guy. You kind of, it's just one of those things. The job at Corpus Christi was assistant position. And I think they were just starting up down there at that time. That job paid like $21,000. Difficult to live in Corpus at that time, I believe, with that money. So.
Yeah, I remember, and maybe it's a little different. I think it is. I don't know. I don't know how to say this. I know back in 2001, when I finished my year at Neosho and was all coming back, I'd done nothing but recruiting. So I was super excited what 2002 was going to look like. And I had applied for a couple of different jobs and was having a phone interview for a really big job that I did not deserve at all to have that interview. But another coach on that staff, after I didn't get the job, called me up and we were talking about just career and everything. And Sue Parks at Ball State had called me and said, hey, if you don't get this other job, I'll hire you here. Like I need an assistant. And so I was kind of him and hawing back and forth. I was like, man, I just signed an unbelievable recruiting class, but Ball State's Division I, et cetera. And this coach, it changed my life. In fact, I'll say who it was, because I got to give a shout out. He's retired now, so who cares anymore? But Bill Lawson.
Yeah.
Bill told me, because I was like, I was trying to weigh coming back or going to Ball State. What are you gonna say?
Mike, I hate to tell you this, but I've got to go to the restroom. Can we take a break?
No, you go. I'm going to tell my Bill Lawson story. So go. Okay. So Bill Lawson is at this place that I had the phone interview at that I said, I shouldn't have been even interviewed for this job, but I'm asking Bill for some advice, and his words still ring true. This was 20 plus years ago. And I'm so grateful and have told Bill hundreds of times how grateful I am for him. And what he meant to me and in his words of advice to me. But I asked him, should I stay here at Neosho? I just signed an amazing class, had like 3 of the top 5 110 hurdle sprinters coming out of high school coming there and a bunch of other great kids. And Bill told me, he's like, Mike, every year we go into the junior college system and get the best athletes. That was a given, right? So all these great schools are coming into the junior college ranks, getting these great athletes. He goes, but rarely do we go in and get the coaches. And that really spoke to me. That really hit me right in the brain, not just not the heart and the feels, but like in the brain of like, oh man, calculation time here. If I've got a chance to go back to Division I, maybe I should take that. Now I say that, and this is why I was kind of hemming and hawing on how to say this, because, he said that, and he was spot on. Bill Lawson is a genius and has a great finger on the pulse of coaching in the NCAA level and junior college level. But we have had great coaches from junior college go on to do great things. We mentioned down at Blinn, Pat Henry. I don't think I need to give his accolades, but obviously has gone on to LSU and Texas A&M. Steve Sylvie, who has been at Arkansas, Mississippi State, now doing a bang out job at University of Alabama, Huntsville. So we have had coaches go out, but it just meant a lot when Bill was saying, hey, we go into junior college every year to get the best athletes, but rarely do we go out and get the coaches. So that's why I left Neosho to go to Ball State, all because of Bill Lawson. So for good or bad, thank you, Bill. It was all good, actually. I love you, Law. I love you. Okay, so where are we at? So you're at Barton with Lyles. Love Lyles.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, Lyles.
How'd that go? I don't remember. I started going Ball State on the women's side, and then I went down to Mississippi State. I feel like Barton was still winning at that time, right?
Yeah, I was there for 2 years. We won seven national titles while I was there.
Wow. Holy cow.
4 on the women, 3 on the men.
Man, holy cow.
Yeah.
And you were there for 2 years. That was like a lifetime for you at this point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw that jab.
Yeah, that was the longest so far, no doubt.
And you survived 2 years with Lyles. I mean, that is, on its own is its own accomplishment.
Oh, Lyles was the best. I love that guy. He really helped me to really kind of find some direction as far as coaching styles, everything. It was a lot of fun.
What are you doing? That's a great point you said there about coaching styles. So you've gone through, because now what year is this now? Are we 05, 06?
Yeah, that's first year there was 03.
Okay, 03, 04. So you've coached many, many years now at this point. You started your coaching education journey by mentors, so like a Tom Hayes and Compton, who, come on. I don't think, I know he gets a lot of credit for what he does, but I don't think Brian Compton gets enough credit for what he does and has done. He is phenomenal. Just had the women's pole vault champ again, by the way, at Division I this past weekend. What are you doing at this point for coaching education? Are you doing any of the what I call the formal education, so the USATFs, et cetera, versus what I call the informal, but just as important, talking with others that have achieved success?
Yeah, I was a level 1 at that point. I wanted to get a level 2 certification, never did. Still don't to this day. But I'm taking some exercise physiology classes and still figuring things out a little bit there. But other than that, it's really more just a trial and error and using this, what works here, what works there. Yeah,
good. I haven't seen too many coaches have success without doing some form of it. It doesn't have to be the like I said, the official side of it, the certificates and things like that. But I think having other people in our industry that are achieving success, having bounce back and talking with them. Hey, here, I tried this. Have you ever tried that? What are you guys doing now? How's that working? That is just as invaluable. In those coaches that I've seen close themselves off and either think that they have all the secrets, so they don't want to tell anybody their secrets, and think they know it all, so they don't ask other people, don't typically do that well. I was fascinated. I was at the Texas high school track clinic this past January, and 2 phenomenal coaches, a bunch of phenomenal coaches spoke, but 2, just another tier up, Vince Anderson and Boo Schexnayder spoke.
Oh, yeah.
And I was not floored. Actually, I wasn't. This is what I would expect from these gentlemen. When Vince was talking, he spoke on the start and acceleration. Boo was in the crowd taking notes. And when Boo spoke, Vince Anderson was right there taking notes. And it's like, oh man, these guys, like if they didn't go to these things, you wouldn't say, it's like, yeah, they've achieved it all. They know it all, for crying out loud. You would never say anything, but yet where were they? They were front and center taking notes on the other people's. And I just thought that was what a great example. Like if you're a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old coach and you're not doing those things today, what excuse do you have?
Oh, I agree. Now, when I was at Odessa, I had a volunteer assistant coach. His name was Chad Perry. Chad ran or competed at UT. Dan Paff was there.
Yes.
Chad's claim to fame was the B-section pole vault winner when he was in college. He was about a 17.5, 17.6 guy. Chad showed up at my office one day, and he goes, "Hey, I'd like to be your volunteer." I moved over here. I said, "Perfect. You're my guy." So then, I get to talking to Chad. Chad has every damn path workout that was ever given to him while he was at UT. So then, in our off time, we sit down, we're comparing stuff, we're going over all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's amazing to me, what Dan does. I mean,
Yeah.
that guy's like a genius.
Yeah.
Him
No.
and Boo and Vince, I mean, they're just way smarter than where I could be. I have to dumb that stuff down a little bit to try to figure it out, but it is amazing.
I have interviewed, like I said, actually it's over 200 coaches because we've had several episodes where we had more than one coach, and I've had the pleasure of interviewing Boo and Dan. And both of them, for different reasons, were very nerve-wracking for me. One, for Boo. Boo was my mentor. I mean, that's who I learned everything from, and he was just so gracious to me. So for me to interview my mentor was a little nerve-wracking. And Dan, who I didn't get as much mentorship from him when I coached, although knew him knew him well enough. And my claim to fame was beating his athlete at the SECs in the long jump, which it's actually what I put on every resume today. That's my number one thing I put on there. Yeah. But Dan, I was nerve-wracked because I mean, he's just so smart.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not just in because we don't talk X's and O's, so we didn't even talk about how to train people, just in his thought processes. Out of 200 coaches I've interviewed, 198, because I'll put Boo in this category too, will give an answer. Dan answered everyone with, "Well, it depends. Well, it's a spectrum. Well," and it's and when you think about life, it's well, it is a spectrum, and not many decisions in life are yeses or nos. It's well, I did this because this advantage, although if I'd have stayed, I'd have had these advantages. I mean, it was really fascinating. And two of many interviews that have really affected me on a personal level. I mean, those two guys are they're legendary. They're Hall of Famers. I mean, we use, I use that Hall of Famer description maybe too much, but these two, they deserve it all.
Yeah, amazing. Just amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. So from Barton, you win 7 titles in 2 years. There's only, wait, hold on. There's 1, 2, 3.
That would have been what, 8?
Yeah.
Indoor, outdoor. Yeah, 8.
Yeah.
We lost the men's title my last semester there outdoor at South Plains.
To who?
Yeah.
To who? Who won it?
I think it was Central Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Or it might have been South Plains.
Yeah, but that was a time when the Arizona schools, and specifically Central Arizona, was they had a lot of throwers, and yeah. I do remember that. That's right. So from Barton, do we go to New Mexico?
Yep, went down here. Oh, this place. Whew,
yeah.
So I got here.
I'll say we were talking about this. This is interesting to me. So you've been there now, what do we say, 17 years?
Yeah, 17 years.
And I cannot remember, not that I knew every junior college out there by any means, but I did not know there was a New Mexico junior college. I'm so sorry. That sounds terrible. But talk to us about, so first of all, why go to New Mexico? You're not from there. You're from Kansas. Why are you leaving the state? And it's a head coaching job. So what's going on? Why would we go there?
We're about 90 miles from Odessa, right in there. So we're right on that border of Texas and New Mexico. I liked it at Odessa. I enjoyed that. Also, at that time, Kansas is still books and tuition scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
We're still fundraising for out-of-state kids and international kids. New Mexico is in the Region 5. They can offer a full scholarship. So in that instance, it's a lot better. Plus, we're right on the border of Texas and New Mexico.
Right.
So I can get into Texas and start doing some more recruiting down there.
Right.
And bring a different type of athlete with a little better skills, maybe.
So what was the state of New Mexico Junior College when you took over? Were they successful, or was it just they were just there?
The initially I interviewed for this job in 2004. And then they told me I was going to have to do a teaching presentation. And I said, "Oh man, I don't want to do that."
Not me.
then they said, well, you can't, we're not going to interview then. I said, that's fine. I'll just stay up here, Barton. No problem. So they hired someone else. That guy was there for middle of the next semester and ended up having to leave for personal reasons. So they called me back and I came down. But facilities, I mean, we had a barely workable track outdoor. It was that real thin, retreaded tire. I mean,
that was my old high school track.
Yeah, with concrete underneath.
Yep.
We had 30 hurdles, no high jump pits, no pole vault pits, no implements whatsoever. The 2 years before they scored in the DMR, so they were 19th at indoor nationals.
Sure.
And that was really about it. Now, back in the 70s, when the men's program was strong before they dropped it, they were national champions a couple times in there. So they had some history. So they kind of had an idea of, what it took to be able to get there, but everything had just gone, south a little bit as far as facilities. So, the ADs, he goes, well, what do you need? I said, well, I need some hurdles. I need some starting blocks. I need some high jump pits. I mean, we got a hold of Gil. Gil sent us, high jump, the little package, high jump standard with a crossbar and some pits. We bought that. We got that going. And it was just a tough road. No assistant coach.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was just me. Cross country, indoor, outdoor, all that stuff. So I kept saying, I'd go to the AD every day, or not every day, but, every so often. And I'd say,
they probably felt like it was every day. It's like, all right, Keith, we hear you.
It did. But, I'd say, what's the thoughts on hiring an assistant coach? Well, you got to have your numbers to here. You got to have this. We got to be able to do that. And I said, okay, fine. So, that first year, I got in there in July, 3 girls on the team, 3 of them. I got in there in July, and I didn't recruit while I was at Barton because I wasn't going to recruit for another school while I'm at somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, you get morals. Yep.
Yeah. And then, so come August, I had 18 kids, 17, 18, right in there. That first year, we were 7th at indoor nationals, 11th at outdoor. And I thought, man, that's not too bad. So we recruited. I got to recruit for a full year. Kids came in. We went to indoor nationals at Texas Tech. And this was the changing of where our program started, I believe. We ended up 4th at that indoor nationals, but it was close enough that our president was there. So after we got done with 4th, we're out to eat. We're sitting there, and he goes, Coach, what do we got to do to be in the top 3?
They're competitive. Yeah.
I said, well, first thing I need is an assistant coach, and I need more scholarship money.
Right.
Because I think at that time, I only had like 9 scholarships that were all divided up in there. So that at the end of that year, that's when we hired Jeff. I ended up hiring Jeff Becker as the assistant, brought him down from Colby. And Jeff, he's like the opposite side of the spectrum for me. I mean, I'm the guy that does this, does that. Jeff does exactly all that stuff that I don't want to do.
Nice.
It was a great fit, and from there we started progressing. We won our first indoor title. We tied with Iowa Central. I think it was 3 or 4 years later at indoor nationals over in Charleston. 2 years later, the president comes to me again. He goes, what do you think if I built you a new facility? I said, yeah, I'm all over that. That sounds good. So he comes back in and he says, well, this is what we're going to do. And I said, okay, that sounds good. But, everywhere I've ever been, they've always said, hey, well, let's do this, let's do that. And it never came
Right.
Well, sure enough, Bynum came in, did their presentation, did all their stuff, broke ground. We built I think at that time it was $3 million facility, upgraded it a few years later, and now upgrading it again. But it is unbelievable state-of-the-art facility. Since that time also, I think 17 we won indoor outdoor, 18 we won indoor outdoor with the women, 19 we won the won the outdoor, got beat in the indoor. 20, we won the indoor, and then COVID hit.
Hmm.
So we were on a little bit of a run there. And then at the end of 2019, we started the men's program back up.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a whirlwind, no doubt.
What's it like, not minimizing national titles that you won as an assistant coach at Barton specifically, because winning's hard. So I don't want to take away anything of that. Even though you have things rolling, every year is a different year. It's hard. But what's it like as the head coach of New Mexico Junior College, starting with 3 women on the team and winning your first national title, to build it up to win your national title? You as at the helm. Remember, we talked about everything flows through you first and foremost, good and bad. Yep. What was that title like?
That first one in 210 was, I mean, I'll tell you, I didn't sleep for a week before that meet. Because as a coaching staff, you do the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
You go through
over and over and over.
Hey, we can be here. We can do this. We can do that. If this happens, we're right here. Well, it never works that way when you get to the meet. Because, there was years before that, I always thought, hey, we had a shot, and we would end up 3rd or 4th or somewhere in there. But that 2010 team, we knew we were going to be somewhere in there if our kids did what they needed to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't sleep for a week before. I was up, and Jeff and I were making plans of what we're going to do, what's going to go on here. And I mean, it was fun, especially since it was my first head coaching national title.
Right.
Because I always had Miles to do all that stressing for me. He was always worked up. I didn't have to be.
Right.
Now all of a sudden I'm the one that's got to go, gosh, man, what happens if this happens or that happens?
Yeah.
And
where was that meet at in 2010?
It was at Charleston, Illinois.
Oh, you're at Eastern. Yeah.
200.
Oh, yeah. Just down the road from us. Yeah. What part of the meet was it locked up? Did it go all the way to the 4x4, or was there after a certain event, it's like, oh, it's done, they can't catch us?
We tied with.
Oh, Iowa that's Central. Right. Oh, yeah.
And it was a nail biter to the end. It was, we would go back and forth here. And Denny Meyer, Denny was a great coach, won a lot of national titles. And Denny looked calm, looked like everything. And I wore out that track walking around that son of a gun. If I'd had my watch on, was counting my paces that day, boy, I'd been over a million.
What did you have to do in the 4x4 to tie it?
4x4, we had to win it outright.
Okay.
If we're second, we tie.
Okay.
And we had, I think we were number 1 or number 2 coming in.
Yeah.
We were right in that area, and we could have won it. We should have won it.
That's true coach speak right there. We should have won it.
We should have. Barton County, with about 5 meters to go, passed us up and nipped us at the line. We ended up second that 4x4.
Oh, no.
I thought we had it, and then all of a sudden we didn't. Oh. We ended up with the tie with Iowa Central.
Does it, as a guy who's never won a national title, does it at all, and maybe the answer is different because this is the first one as the head coach, does it take away, because spoiler alert, this happened again this year. Does it take away any joy at all that you tied for the national title versus winning it outright?
No.
Okay. I wouldn't,
as long
think
as it's
so.
the first one.
Yeah.
It's the first one. So
okay.
we're still national champions, but I will tell you this, 10 years later or 13 years later, whatever, nobody knows it's a co. Iowa Central calls it a national champion. We call it a national champion. So
right.
You never look at it that way.
That's a good point.
So
that's a good point. You're not building rings that say co-national champs.
That's right.
They didn't split the trophy in half. That's a good point. You were national champs. Yeah. That's a great point.
Yep.
So you mentioned your first one because we just had junior college indoor nationals at Washburn, and was it your men or women? Your men.
Men tied with South Plains,
which is when you think about what is there 17 indoor events, the odds of it tying are just Like,
Oh,
how
it's
does that
unbelievable.
even stinking happen?
There-
So you won
yeah.
another national title. Is this the second one, or did you have any others where you tied for the?
That's only our second
I
time
hope so.
with
Good
the men.
Lord.
Yeah, there was no more, and that was a rough one too. Now our women, that title would have been number 8 for us since I've been here. So
Wow.
that's indoor outdoor. That's number 8 for them. Men, that was their first.
Wow. And you just started the men's program in 19?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty good in
2009.
4 years. And we had a COVID year in there to
Yep,
win it.
COVID.
Yeah.
That first year, we were 4th in Virginia at indoor nationals, and then when we got home, COVID hit and they shut us down.
Well, that's right. You had 1 week
Um,
ahead. Yeah.
and it kind of COVID hurt us. We had a little bit of a lull in there because of recruiting and restrictions and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I think we're finally getting back on track.
Mm-hmm. So what's it like? Every school is different, and definitely every junior college is different. We talked about some of the uniquenesses of the California community college system. We talked about uniquenesses of Odessa versus the Kansas Jayhawk conferences in regards to scholarships, things like that. You're in Hobbs, New Mexico, which I got to give a shout out to one of our first guests. I think he was guest number 4, former GA of mine, now the head coach at UAB, Kurt Thomas. He is a Hobbs, New Mexico. That's where he went
Yeah,
to
he
high
was at
school.
UAB. Every time I ran into him, he would tell me that.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
from
100%. There ain't that many from Hobbs. So, of course, he's going to tell you every time. So, shout out to Kurt Thomas. Love him to death. Great, great, great friend of mine, and the women's head coach there at UAB. I can't say Hobbs without saying Kurt. So, it just happens automatically. But what are some of the uniquenesses there at New Mexico Junior College in Hobbs, New Mexico? Do you struggle with getting kids to even come on campus to check you out, or what? What's some uniquenesses you have to battle against there?
I mean, we're the community here. I think is a family. And that's one of the reasons that I've been able to stay is because it's a family. I think everybody looks out for everybody else here. The JC is, I mean, I was a year here, 2 years there, moving around. I was able to find a home here, support from the president, support from administration, uh, everything that has gone on here within the community. I just can't say enough good things about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've embraced me, they've embraced my family, they've done a lot of good things for us.
I think that's evident that because we have a lot of similarities here in this aspect, Keith, going through till today to our current employer and our current profession, we moved around a lot. Like I said, we just learned your history. Like I said, I coached for 10 years, was at 5 different places, and then moved to Vegas, and then moved again. So I was all over the place. But I've now been here 17 years, and you've now been there 17 years. And I think that shows, because no one would have guessed that. Our first year at New Mexico, our first year at Gill, if we were betting people, we'd have said, yeah, maybe another year, and they'll be
Yeah,
on to something
yeah,
else.
a
And
couple
instead,
years and go.
yeah,
Yeah.
at best, right? In regard, now you look back, it's like, oh no, you found community and home, and so you found that there at Hobbs.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's been good for us. My daughter, she's 12, just turned 12 the other day. My son is 10. They play travel softball, travel baseball. When I'm not at a track meet or gone recruiting, I'm at a dang softball or baseball game at Midland or Pecos or somewhere around, and it's just never ending. But it's what we choose. It's what we wanted. I just can't say enough good things about this place.
That's awesome. Well, you say it loudly by being there for another year. I mean, you have obviously throughout your career have had a lot of success, but now in your time frame there at New Mexico Junior College, like lots of success, and lots of success with the buck stops here as the head coach. So I mean, that's there's other places you could go to, and yet here you are still there winning every year.
But what's really funny, and I don't know if this is me. I don't know how this works, but every year I feel like it's that first year at Dodge City.
Huh.
That we've got something to prove. We have to do this. And I don't know. It's different. I enjoy it, and it's every year feels like that. hey, we've got to work. We've got to get things done. People are coming after us, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's fun, no doubt.
So with the time remaining, let's take a step back from New Mexico Junior College and talk about junior college track and field as a whole. You've had the vast majority of your career has been in this really amazing part of our sport. It's my all-time favorite. I'm so happy that I did a year at Neosho County. I'm so happy I didn't do more than 1 year, but I'm really glad I did a year of junior college track and field. And you know, you've heard me say this at other junior college nationals. It's my favorite level of track and field. Now I've been at the Olympic trials, Division I championships, just finished Division II, which again, unbelievable. It's just amazing. High school nationals, etc. The junior college side to me is, I think it's because it's my people. And what I mean by that is these are second chance kids. Sometimes these are second chance coaches. These are coaches that have to do just like the every other four-year school. You've got to go recruit high school kids and international, et cetera. So you're always recruiting. And just like every high school coach out there, you're working to get those kids recruited by other schools. You're always in a state of flux. You only get 2 years max with these kids.
Yep.
So you're always recruiting and always getting your kids recruited. So it's just to me, it's just a fascinating level of track and field. What have you seen? You know, you're decades in, my friend, of coaching. I know it's hard to hear that sometimes, but it's true, of coaching junior college track and field. What have you, if anything, seen change in the realm of junior college track and field?
You know, and junior college has been through a big transition, especially the last few years. The Region 6 moving from a books and tuition scholarship to being able to offer a full scholarship.
I did not know that.
Yep, that changed everything dramatically. I mean, now they're able to offer, everybody is now offering the same scholarship.
Wow.
Now, whether everybody has the same amount of scholarships, who knows? But everybody has the ability to be able to do that. Also, remember back in the day when it used to be 2 international on cross country, 5 international on track and field, so a total of 7. No more. They totally threw that out. Now we're able to have, you know, whatever we are able to recruit. So now it just basically makes it so we're able to recruit the best kids that we can get. Doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter, you know. So, but that scholarship change in the Region 6 changed everything dramatically. I mean, those guys started coming on. Now I was getting, you know, I'm getting more, you know, recruiting head to head with Martin and with all those guys up there. So it made it a lot more fun. I can tell you that, a lot more competitive.
When did that occur, roughly?
Oh, I want to say end of 2018.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. So still pretty new. Yeah. Wow. What about recruiting? You know, when I was there, for me, it was always the kids who didn't like there were no, if you were a qualifier, and like I just didn't talk to you because the quality of kids I was looking for, it's like, man, if I'm recruiting you and you're a qualifier, you were supposed to be at a Division I, Division II school. Is it still a lot of academically ineligible kids? Because we changed a lot of eligibility with NCAA and things like that.
Yeah, I mean nowadays, I mean, Division I doesn't need to score on the SAT or SAT, right?
Right.
So, I mean, we're getting kids that may be short core. Everybody goes to junior college for different reasons. Could be academic deficiencies, could be need to get better athletically, could be cost of attendance. I mean, obviously, junior college is a lot cheaper. And I don't want to say this too loud, but our total cost to go to school, because these other guys get mad at me whenever I talk, we're $7,400 for the year. That includes books, tuition fees, room, board, meals.
Wow.
You know, I mean, you can't get a better, if you're a walk-on and you're trying to get better and get that scholarship to the next level. Yeah, this is where you need to be.
Wow. That's amazing in today's world. I mean,
Yeah,
when a schools now says they're 25, 30,000, I'm like, it's not too bad in today's world. That's,
yep.
it's pretty cheap, unfortunately. Right.
I mean, there,
I got two kids just like you, and it's like, oh man, I can't imagine what it's going to cost to
yeah,
put them in school.
yeah,
That's
it's
a
crazy, huh?
great deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, there's some junior colleges that are high. Some of them go, 12,000,
Right.
something around in there. But when I first got here in '05, and we've had our raise, our tuition raises and things like that, but
Mhm.
it was 6,200 then. So,
Wow.
in 17 years, we've gone up about $1,200, which is not bad.
Yeah, no, not at all. Some school just like in this last hour we've been talking has raised their tuition 1,200 just in the last hour. So
Yeah,
no, that's not bad at
yeah,
all.
yeah. I guarantee it. Now, our upside is if our tuition goes up, we're going to get a raise in scholarship also. At least
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be one of those. But well, I shouldn't say that. Back in '09, when our tuition went up, uh, things were a little tougher at that time. So we were, we took a raise in tuition, but we got bumped down in scholarship.
Oh,
Then after that fourth place finish in '09, we ended up getting that back and a little
yeah.
bit more. So,
Things continue to evolve. When I got into junior college coaching around the 2000 2001 timeframe, Blinn we talked about was the powerhouse and had dropped off or had dropped their program, forgive me. Barton County was kind of the bee's knees, and a lot of Arizona schools, like you mentioned, Central Arizona, were very hot. I don't
yeah,
even remember Iowa having junior colleges, and now
well,
Iowa
they're
Western,
loaded.
Iowa Central, those guys are winning national
Yeah,
titles. Fort
yeah.
Scott didn't have a program. Philip Redrick is doing a great job there at Fort Scott. Where do you see junior college going as a whole? Put your crystal ball on. Where do you see this going in the next decade to 2020?
I think that as far as track and field, our levels of just excellence is going to keep getting better. I mean, we've got a great bunch of coaches in junior college. I mean, these young guys coming in, man, I can hardly keep up with those guys. They are doing a great job.
Yeah, I agree.
No doubt about that. Everything has changed. If I look over into Region 6 and I see Fort Scott won the region, I think, man, that's a turn in right there. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they're doing a great job. Redrick's doing a great job over there. Dave Shinnick is still at Barton. He's doing
Yeah,
well.
Dave, man, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, junior college is getting a great bunch of coaches. The problem is we can't keep those coaches. They do such a good job. They keep moving up.
Mm-hmm.
Tamari Henry, guy I had last year for 2 years.
Yeah,
Tamari, he'll move up.
yeah.
My guy now, Gino Hall. Gino's doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope to be able to keep him for another 2, maybe 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the level of coaches, is tremendous. And Harry and I and Ted and Jeff, we're the last of the old guys, seems like.
I love Harry and Ted. You cannot lump yourself in their level, not because of accolades, because of age. You're not there yet.
You know,
You ain't the
back in
last of them
80,
yet. Harry but he's the grandfather, the grandpooba of all JUCO track coaches, man.
back in '82 when I was at Cloud County, and I thought Harry was old then. now look where we're at. you know?
Harry, because I know you're listening. I love you, man. Don't it's all love with you, friend. You know that. What
Yeah.
okay, so last question. We're gonna leave it on this. And you don't know that this question's coming, so you got to really think about this.
Oh.
Why? Because it should happen. Why should Netflix's show The Last Chance U go to New Mexico Junior College for track for their next season?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, there's some crazy things that happen in junior college. There's no doubt about that because it's smaller community. There's the kids spend more time together. So when athletes spend that much time together, you're always going to have some sort of drama in there. Something is always going on, and then the community is a little bit smaller, so there's no way to actually get away from each other. So I mean, it could be a drama thing, no doubt about it. And I've always said that if I was going to write a book or do a reality show, boy, this would be the place to be at the junior college level.
Yeah, when it
'Cause
first
even
came out and they did Eastern Mississippi football, and I was like, oh, come to Kansas, man. Let me tell you, do track and field. Come on, this ain't
yeah,
nothing compared to what we.
oh gosh, it's crazy. And then when you have like some of the Region 6 schools, or even a couple down here, you have 60 athletes with 2 coaches, maybe 3 coaches. Woo, like it's tough.
Well, I think we need to make it happen, Netflix. We've done basketball and football now, and those were fantastic seasons. I think, with Olympic year coming up and world
Yeah.
champs, it would be a fantastic time to do a track and field season. And New Mexico Junior College would be a great candidate for that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that one. The president might not like it too much.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, but no, it would be an eventful. It might be a
Absolutely.
number one show for a while.
Well, I know I'd watch it. And I know you listening right now would watch it as well. And Keith, man, thank you so much. One of the most valuable things you can ever give us is your time. And, coming off of a national championship, getting ready for outdoor, which means I'll assume you have pretty big goals for the
I
team
hope
and
so.
squad, and
Yes,
you're in the middle of
absolutely.
recruiting never stops. So you're doing that. So for you to spend some time with us today, man, just a lot of fun. And, you and I have known each other for a long time. And again, I have such admiration and love for the junior college system. So I just love what you're doing. I love that you're building a legacy. You've continued to build a legacy through your career, but to do it now with some roots in Hobbs at New Mexico Junior College, it's really special what you're building physically there, as well as transparently with the athletes and the program and assistant coaches themselves, man. So I'm just so proud of you and just so thankful for you.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I had a great time. Absolutely.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. And thanks for being here listening today. Come back next week. We'll do it all over again as we uplift and honor coaches from around the world. Have a great week, everybody.